everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. We are talking Good Witch, and we are doing a one episode recap this episode because we had some big news in the world of Good Witch, and we just had to talk about it. And I'm film critics Rachel Wagner, and Randy Carter's here.
Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah. So we're very sad though. We got some sad news about Good Witch over the weekend.
It is sad. You predicted it on our last podcast, or at least had hints you were feeling very concerned, and obviously rightly so. It is sad. It is sad that they're canceling the show. The thing is, though, it's been on the air for 7 years. That's a long time for any show. And then, 7 movies before that. So 14 years or whatever it is. That's a long time. So we've been lucky we've had it this long. My real question is, when did they know that they were canceling the show? Like, how, did they have time to do like some sort of wrap up? I mean, the show never has like big cliffhangers, but a lot of times they leave little storylines, dangling. And I'd hate to think that this whole thing ends and we have dangling plot lines left over. But I don't know when they knew they were being canceled. The day before they announced it, they did that FaceTime, or the Facebook Live interview. Like, why would they go to that trouble, to do that PR if they knew they were ending the show?
Yeah, it's always sad when they don't get a true final season when a show is just canceled. I hope that they had some idea of this so that we get a satisfying conclusion, because it's just always a shame on shows when it's not really resolved well.
Yeah, or alternatively, if they didn't get a chance to do it, maybe a final wrap-up movie would be in the cards. If they did have some plot lines left over.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, especially if it's like a major cliffhanger. At least there's nothing like that as far as like, I don't know, like the show Christie when it was canceled and you didn't know who she was going to end up with. It was, like a big cliffhanger. Those are the worst.
As long as they don't remember last season, the cliffhanger was they found those bags of dirt and everyone was like, what is it? Who left these bags of dirt? Imagine that had been the last season and that was where we ended. That would have been horrible. Like, you set up this whole new storyline and then there's nowhere to go with it. So hopefully they won't do that. It is an odd time if they did know, and so they shot a wrap up. It was just an odd timing to when they announced it, with 3 more episodes or whatever there is still to go. Or it seemed odd, an odd decision to announce it at that time.
Yeah. And I feel, I guess it's still going to be 10 episodes, but for some reason it felt when they said that it was going to be over on the 25th, that surprised me because I was expecting them to go into August for some reason. I don't know. I guess I expected them to have 12 episodes.
Yeah, they've only ever had 10. Oh, well, except this year they didn't have the Halloween, which usually is like counts as 2 extra episodes because it's a 2-hour Halloween movie, which they weren't able to do this year. It's so funny on the social medias, before this, a lot of people were complaining about this season, like this season isn't as good as past seasons, and they didn't like the direction the show was going. And then they announced it as canceled, and now everyone's complaining, how dare they cancel this show? It's our favorite show. We love it. It's like you can never please everyone, I guess.
Yeah, the cast, of course, came out and talked about it. Catherine Bell, she said, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." That's the Dr. Seuss quote. And she says, "I know we will all miss Good Witch and all the amazing characters and stories, but I'm definitely smiling because it happened." And she says that Cassie Nightingale is a woman who is always positive, inspiring, and uplifting. Someone who brings out the best in everyone she meets, makes life better for everyone around her, and always sees the glass half full. She's inspired me to be a better person, to be kinder, gentler, more loving, and accepting. I know that many of you have felt the same. I feel so fortunate. And then James Denton, he says it has always been, oh sorry, he said it would be unseemly to complain about your show being canceled after 7 seasons, and I won't. I've been very fortunate to have been on other long running series, but Good Witch was special. The fans were so devoted to the show, and I'm disappointed for them, but I hope they know how much the actors appreciated their vocal support. The cast was the nicest collection of wildly talented people I've ever been around. The producers treated us extremely well, and I'm happy to still have two two movies to make with the network. So I'm not saying goodbye to Hallmark audiences just yet. So that's interesting. We're gonna have see James Denton in a
Right.
couple
Well,
Hallmark movies.
yeah, he's been sort of not a regular, but he's been in a couple of other Hallmark movies. I'm sure he'll go. Catherine Bell will continue, I'm sure, in some other Hallmark movies as she's been doing. I would love to see Catherine Disher do some Hallmark
I
movies now. That
know.
would be great.
Well, I have two. One selfish motive, the other because I genuinely would love to see her in Christmas in a Christmas movie or in any movie for Hallmark, but also because she's our most frequent guest on our podcast. She's been on our show 6 times, and so without her being on Good Witch, we need her to be in other Hallmark stuff so we can still have her on our show.
Right.
So, but Kat Barrel, she said that it has been such an absolute pleasure to be part of the Good Witch family for the last 2 years. From day one, I was welcomed with open arms, and it always felt like I had been there so much longer. This cast and creative team are some of the kindest people I've ever worked with, and every day on set was a special one. I'm so grateful for the memories we have made and proud of the beautiful stories we told. What a legacy the show has left behind over its 14-year run, movies and series. Cannot wait for you guys to see the rest of the season, truly going out with a very magical and heartfelt bang. So there we go.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah,
the fact that so many of the actors had like a statement sort of ready to go tells me
yeah,
that they've known for at least a little bit of time. I mean, those things don't get composed overnight. So, that makes me hopeful that they were aware that it's going to be the final season and they at least, did some sort of a wrap up at the end.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, I just felt like the reason why I said that last time is I just felt like there wasn't a whole lot of buzz around the show. I mean, it was really hard for me to find someone to fill in for when you were gone. I couldn't find anybody who not even just who could do the show. It was hard for me to find anybody who even was watching it. So it just made me think like I
Right.
don't know about this.
Well, Well, after they announced the cancellation, I sort of did a deep dive into looking at the ratings, both the live ratings and the sort of live plus three, which is the main ratings that they
Uh-huh.
follow. It used to be in the previous seasons, Good Witch would do about 2 million viewers live, give or take a couple 100,000. Sometimes it was 1.8, sometimes it was 2.2, but it was fairly steady, right around the 2 million viewer mark, give or take. Then the last couple of seasons, last season, it sort of dipped a little bit, but not too bad. And then this season started slow. And in the last 3 or 4 weeks, they're down to like 1.3, 1.4 million viewers. They've lost 500,000 viewers this season, which is like a quarter of their viewing audience. So that's significant and I'm sure played a part. Also, shows just get more expensive the more years that go by because people get raises and it just becomes a more expensive show to put on. And, it's all
Yeah.
business. When people are complaining, Hallmark's canceling on my favorite show, it's all, they only cancel the shows if they just don't think it's worth it to keep them on the air anymore,
I wonder if a big part of it
just
is the
financially.
yeah, I wonder if a big part of it is the Bailey Madison effect because that would be 2 years ago. That would be
Interesting. Right. That's when it started, sort of dipping. Before
yeah.
that, for years, like for 5 years in a row, it was right around 2 million viewers. I mean,
Yep.
it was pretty steady and pretty loyal. And then, yeah, once Bailey left, I mean, some people will argue maybe that's when they should have ended it. Let Bailey graduate from high school
Yeah.
and, wrap up the show.
Because not only
But,
with her
then we
leave,
wouldn't have gotten our last 2 years.
yeah. because not only with her leaving, do you have the a certain degree of fans, but you have like a whole demographic really that all of a sudden the show doesn't appeal to anymore because you got that younger
That's why I
audience.
thought when Bailey left, right, when Bailey left, I thought for sure they were going to replace her with another sort of teenager, like an orphan or somebody that
Yeah.
Cassie takes in, who needs, and sort of like basically, but I'm sure they were thinking to themselves, that seems so obvious, right? If I thought of it, it's super obvious. And so maybe they should try to do something a little bit different. And so they brought Joy in instead. Um, so, they tried it, and obviously it didn't quite work out for them. I still like the sad part is, and we're going to talk about this episode. I feel like this episode we just watched is the best episode of this season so far.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a pretty good one. And I think that also they're just making a lot of changes at Hallmark right now. And so I think
Absolutely.
there's just sort of a feeling of kind of just starting afresh. I mean, I don't think we'll have another season of Chesapeake Shores after this unless it does like crazy well. I think this is the end. So there'll only be one of the shows left, and they got rid of Home and Family. They got rid of the Bubbly Sesh. They got rid of most of the executive team. So it's I
Right.
think it's sort of
Is
feels
the show
right.
that's still on is When Calls the Heart, right?
Yeah, that's the
When
only
Calls the Heart is the
one.
one that's still on, and
Yeah,
that's their number one show. So,
yeah,
but who knows if how much longer that will stick around.
yeah. So for some reason, people are saying they think that last season will be season 10. I don't know why people are saying that because they're going into season 9. But yeah, we'll see how long When Calls the Heart lasts. But it seems it's not surprising, at least to me, that they are ending the show. I mean, it's a pretty good run, 7 seasons.
Absolutely. I mean, there's
Hmm.
nothing to be ashamed of. Most network shows would kill for 7 seasons.
Yeah.
Most of them do far less than that.
Hmm.
I mean, the real testament, I think, to whether this new sort of direction that Hallmark is taking will be when we get the Christmas shows this
Yeah,
year, this
I
Christmas,
agree.
is, because that's always their biggest rating seasons, right? It's their Christmas time. And if the ratings are way down, or if there's like a big difference in viewership, that they might sort of have to rethink their new course, or they're either going to double down and say, like, we're willing to take a brief, a temporary hit in our viewership before we can bring new viewers on who want the new sort of format and the new direction that they're going.
Yeah. Yeah, did you watch the Christmas in July movie, Crashing Through the Snow, by chance?
I did
That was on this
not.
last. Well, they
I
had
did not
these
get a chance. I did
they
not
had
get a
these
chance.
yeah, they had these promos with the like Rhapsody in Blue, like the big kind of music. And then you see the
Hmm.
Christmas tree, and it said it's gonna be big, bigger than ever. I was like, oh no. So I think they're gonna have more than 40 movies this year. I think it's pretty clear.
I don't know how you do it. Don't you do, because you watch all of them, right? You
Yeah,
do every
I
one.
watch all of them. So I'm gonna
Wow.
die.
That's a
But
lot. That's a lot of Christmas.
I mean,
That's a
last year
lot of Christmas.
I watched and reviewed on this podcast 115 Christmas movies. And I think it's going to be
There
more
should be
this
a
year.
sainthood in your future. Wow.
So yeah, that's going to be
I don't know how
interesting.
you do it. I couldn't do it.
So well, let's dive in. We'd love to hear your comments about the cancellation of the show. How do you feel? Put in the comment section. But let's talk about episode 8, and then we'll do final episode of this recaps on the for the after we'll do episodes 9 and 10, and then so then on the 26th we'll record that and have it on the 27th for y'all. So yeah, let us know what you think. And this episode is called The Sprint. And it's Cassie and Sam are disagreeing about Sam's return to work after his injury. The flower universe is trying to undercut Abigail's business, but she won't go down without a fight. So overall, what do you said that you really, really liked this episode? Is that correct?
I really, really like this episode a lot. And I think the reason that I found it so enjoyable is even though we had like plot lines for a whole bunch of different characters, because they put it in the context of this sweetheart sprint. So they were all sort of doing the same activity together. And then we could, as they went along, we got, information on their various storylines. It just felt more cohesive for me. And, I love, there was none of the storylines bothered me this time. I loved every single one.
Well, yeah, I liked every single one except for I thought that this was kind of a weird plotline for Sammy. This was kind of a weird plotline for Sam and Cassie, like who have never had any major conflict as far as their marriage, and then all of a sudden, with 2 episodes left, they're in this weird place. So that was the only one that I just didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think if we didn't know there were only 2 episodes left, I think this would be a really interesting turn. But I think one of the things we're going to find out, because this whole season, all of the Merowicks have sort of like their sort of powers or their intuition just haven't been on point. And so everyone's been feeling a bit lost and confused. And I'm hoping that, they wrap this all up, and that will include, the whole Sam and Cassie thing. Obviously they have to wrap it up somehow, but I kind of like the idea that they were feuding a little bit and it wasn't all super happy. But again, like knowing that there's only 2 more episodes, is like, how much can they do with this before they have to end everything, which is the one part that makes it sort of not as interesting, because they can only follow up so much.
Yeah. And it seems kind of weird if they end what's a better ending, to end the show with them not having their powers anymore or having their powers? Like that would be feel kind of strange. I feel like for the series to end with them like their powers being finished and not being there anymore.
No, I think it's far more likely that they'll figure out what's been causing this, whatever the curse or whatever you want to call it, whatever's been causing their problems, and they'll figure out a way to solve it. Because as we saw in this episode, like the Merowick plant, which we hadn't heard of in years, but that's the
Yeah.
plant that supposedly kind of gives them their power, and it's all wilting. And you remember the last time we saw that plant, when it was also wilting, because that woman, that flower woman, came cut some of its leaves, and it was wilting. And then Cassie didn't have any of her powers anymore. Her intuition was gone. And so, the fact that that's wilting means something is going on, and they've got to solve it somehow and figure out what it is and set it right, I would think.
Because this plant is in the town, like the town garden, town. I remember what was that? I mean, that episode was a long time ago.
The botanical gardens.
The botanical gardens
was a long time. It was in the botanical gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when they mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen that plant in forever.
Yeah. And the red haloed moon. So how long is the red haloed moon supposed to be there? Do we know like what the timeline is for all of this?
I don't think they've said. I mean, I don't even know if is this like a real thing in real life? Is there really such a thing as a red halo moon? I always assumed it was kind of like an eclipse.
Yeah, that's why
because I don't know
too.
that the moon is ever red haloed. I mean, an eclipse lasts for a day, or just one, not even a day, just a few hours. So
yeah,
I don't think it's that, because obviously it's at nighttime.
Because this seems like it's more than that.
Right. I don't know. I don't think they've said how long this moon is supposed to be like that.
Yeah. So then you have that Martha and Tom, they're worried that they're in a rut. They got themselves the same card from their anniversary, and they totally know what presents they're getting each other. But I feel like that's like the joy of a relationship, right? Is that you don't have to work so hard.
I mean, it is, but 32 years that they've been married. It was their 32nd anniversary. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And I can see them wanting to sort of like keep the other person on their toes or whatever. I mean, listen, I love Martha and Tom together. Like anytime those two are
They are
together
so
is a
good.
joy for me. So, they're so great. So I really love that. And then of course that led to the whole her doing the sweetheart sprint thing. And I
Yes.
love that Tom was so, competitive about it and everything. It's great. It's perfect for them.
Yeah, and they are just so cute, and I feel like you don't typically see, like, their kind of relationship that much on television, like, they're usually these couples that I can't really relate to very much, that are, like, these beautiful movie stars and kind of things, and this is just such an approachable, cute couple.
Right. Right. No, I think they're great together. I always know I'm wishing that Tom was in it more than he is. And in the last couple of seasons, he has been in it a bit more, which is
Yeah.
always welcome.
Yeah, there was I still don't understand what they were doing, I think last season with him moving to Chicago or whatever. That was so weird. Like, why did they have that plot?
I
It
I
didn't make
assumed it
any
was
sense.
like to explain. Yeah, I assumed it was to explain like why Tom wasn't going to be in a whole bunch of episodes. Like, oh, maybe he's not available next season, so they can explain it away. But then he was there the whole time. So I don't know. I don't know where that was. Where they, if
It
they
was
intended
so
that to go
weird.
somewhere, or if it was just an episode where that was the conflict for the
Yeah.
episode.
The other weird thing this season is they brought back Vincent only have him in the first, what, 2 episodes? That's it?
And they started this plot line about him searching for his mother, okay, which I thought was really interesting. And then it sort of like took a left turn into him potentially mentoring or fostering this child that he discovers.
Yeah.
And then they've done nothing with that. And with only 2 more episodes left, what can we possibly do with that? It felt
No.
like, why did you bring him back just to start a thing? It almost feels like they write these episodes with no season long plan, and then they start writing it and then they're like, oh, that's not really going where we wanted it to go, so we'll just be done with it, like without thinking these things through, like having an end game for some of
Yeah.
these storylines, it feels like.
Which is a shame because it could have been good. He was a good character. But it
Yeah,
just, I
i
don't know, it's
i
very
really
weird.
like the finding the mother bit, but
Yeah.
it just didn't go anywhere. Well,
It
even
was
was it you guys interviewed him?
yeah.
And because I listened to that interview and I remember him saying, when you were talking about like the search for the mother, even he said very tactfully, is like, yeah, sometimes those plot lines sort of like, take a left turn and sort of fall by the wayside. And I said to myself at the time, they're never coming back to him
Yeah.
looking for his
I thought the
mother.
same thing too. I'm like, "Oh, darn."
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast.
From the award-winning author of A Royal Christmas Wish comes a charming new romance in the Pine Hollow series where happily ever after begins with adopting an adorable rescue dog.
Lizzie Shane's Once Upon a Puppy is an opposites attract romance featuring a type A lawyer, a free-spirited birthday party princess, and their rambunctious Irish wolfhound who brings them together.
The perfect addition to your summer reading list, Publishers Weekly says Once Upon a Puppy will capture readers' heart from the first page.
Available now wherever books are sold. You can even look for it at your local grocery store.
For more about Once Upon a Puppy and Lizzie's entire Pine Hollow series, visit www.lizzieshane.com.
That's LizzieShane.com.
So then they have Daniel, who is trying to get Donovan to take over the Senate seat and move to Springfield. And so now they're
Yes, which
debating about whether they should have this sort of long distance romance, which I wouldn't think would be too big of a problem because they wanted to have a long engagement anyway.
Yeah, but then we sort of got rid of the long engagement. A long engagement is different from not being in the same city together. Having done long distance relationships in the past,
Yeah.
I can tell you that they are no fun, and especially if it's new, like they are newish, it's a bad idea. So I can understand, Abigail not wanting to do that. To me, the most interesting thing of that plot line was the revelation, because and again, I probably am one of the only people who cares about this, but there's been lots of discussion online about where Middleton is supposed to be. And I've always been in the camp that says it's basically Wisconsin, because it's 2.5 hours like north of Chicago, which is Wisconsin. I went to college in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and so I know the area very well. But Springfield is the capital of Illinois. So
Right.
I think they have pretty much established that Middleton is in Illinois, 2.5 hours, maybe not quite north, but 2.5 hours from Chicago in the state of Illinois. So that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that was. Well, but
I
was
mean,
also
it's last season, so who cares?
yeah. Yeah, maybe they'll finally reveal that that the Simpsons is also in Illinois one of these days. Springfield.
Right.
But yeah, but the thing that was weird to me about kind of this whole plot line is he's confident that they can do it because of the good relationship of his parents and them having a distance. But then Dottie is like, nope, you're wrong. We don't have that good of a relationship. And I thought that it was weird how like Martha and Dottie seem like BFFs in this episode all of a sudden. They seemed like they got along
Well,
all
I
of a sudden
think they
great.
didn't they a few episodes sort of resolve some of their differences. I think like they're frenemies, right? They're frenemies, and when something is really a problem, they'll join forces, and then if it's just a small problem, they'll still poke at each other. But the most unbelievable thing about that is that Donovan grew up in that household and wasn't completely aware that his parents are cold and distant and don't really get along. I mean, as an outsider, I think it's pretty obvious when you saw them together or heard them talk about each other that that's not a comfortable, easy relationship.
Well, Catherine Disher was in rare form in this episode. She was very funny, I thought. She stole the episode.
I mean, 100%. She's always, and then maybe that's why it's my favorite episodes, because she was such a driving force
Yeah.
in this episode with the sprint, the sweetheart sprint.
Yeah.
No, she's great. She's always great. Everybody delivered like really good performances this episode, I thought. I thought Stephanie gave a great performance this episode.
Yeah, but when she is at the bell,
stuff going on.
Yeah, when she's at the Bell Book and Candle getting present ideas, and Cassie's there with the explorer, the compass, and then the binoculars,
And she looks through the binoculars backwards.
Yeah, and then she's like,
so
Martha out. That made me laugh. We also
I know.
Yeah, it was so funny. We also got some conversation about Jake that like we very rarely have had on the show, which was kind of nice. When Cassie says,
it was nice when they recognized.
Yeah, Cassie says, I remember when Jake would go to work every day. It's not easy, but the time I had with Jake meant everything. So because she was talking to Joy.
Yeah. It is nice when they sort of recognize that. I mean, it's been a long time, obviously. I mean, didn't they once say that Jake died when Grace was like 8 and now she's like 20? So, I mean, in movie time, it's been like supposed to have been like 12 years since he died, which is, a long time.
Yeah.
But it is nice when they recognize and harken back to those original movies.
I agree. And then we have Adam helping Stephanie with her goals. And the thing that annoys me about this whole Adam and Stephanie plot is that Adam seems to not own up to the fact that the problems between them are completely his fault. He left. He started dating another person. Like, I don't know. I just feel like he needs to own that more. And he still is irritating me. He's supposed to be so charming, and I'm just not feeling it.
I think I was feeling it a little bit more than you. He started to come around for me in this episode. Just by this. He's what needs to happen is if they do start to get together, and it certainly looked like they were headed in that direction, is Stephanie needs to sort of lay down the law and say, okay, if we're going to do this, here are the ground rules, and then he needs to completely acknowledge that
Yes.
the problems that they had were his fault, as you said. But I do feel like he's just there for her and he's trying to make amends in his own way. I don't know. This was the first episode that I sort of am like leaning back towards being Team Adam, which I haven't been in a long time.
He needs to say he's sorry, I feel like.
He
And
does.
he hasn't done
Oh,
it.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've got 2 more episodes for it to happen.
I know. So Zoe asks Joy on a second date. They are going to go rock climbing. And
That's kind of a great second date, I have
Yeah.
to say.
get everybody out of their comfort zone.
You know, as always, I think Joy is fantastic. I love their whole plot line. I love the idea of them both saying, with Joy not being sort of saying that she can't get over the fact that, Zoe puts herself in danger every day, but she's going to anyway. And the reverse, I'm trying to remember now what the reverse was, that Zoe said she couldn't get over something of Joy's. Oh, it was Joy's ex, right? Didn't she have like
Yeah.
an ex that she was trying to get over? And but those two are so great together. Those two are so
Mhm.
great together. And if anything else, the fact that the show is ending makes me sad that we're not going to get more of them together. We need maybe a spin-off. Let's do a Joy and Zoe spin-off.
Yeah, it was really cute how they keep saying, I can't accept it, but I'm going to. That was really cute
Right. I
about
thought that
their
was
insecurities.
it was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
What did you
And
think? And I bring this up only because this is where this scene took place. What do you think of the renovated cafe?
I have to say, I thought it was pretty underwhelming. It looked exactly the same to me.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They draw the curtains back, and I'm like, oh, okay. It looks almost exactly the same. There's just different booths. Like they put some booths in the recessed wall. Oh, okay.
Oh, it looked
Like,
exactly the
wow.
same. Yeah, I'm glad you felt the same.
Yeah, I was like, that doesn't look like, the renovation took weeks and weeks. We've been waiting for this thing, and like, that's it. I hope Stephanie got a good deal
Yeah.
on that.
So we have we have the conflict between Adam and Stephanie is that Stephanie is going to be trying to audition for this program in Paris, I guess. And
Right.
she's filling out the application and she realizes that she has a audition that she thought was gonna be next year that's actually this month, the same month. So her and Adam work to basically mail the cake to Paris for her so she can have an audition. And
Like, I understand, but like, can a cake really survive being shipped to Paris? Like, would it stay fresh? I mean, I assume you put it in some sort of container that keeps its freshness intact, but that
yeah,
just seemed a little
it seems
much.
like it wouldn't fare well against other people that were there doing it fresh.
Right.
Like even if it was the best cake ever, by the time it got there, it wouldn't be as good as the fresh ones. But you'd have to put like dry ice and stuff like that around it, I would think.
Something. I mean, put it in some sort of vacuum sealed container or something to
Mhm.
preserve the freshness. But it's also like, I don't know. I can't imagine that the school is like, it does seem weird that if they take potential students from all over the world, that they require you to actually show up at the location and make
Yeah.
a cake to get in. But what do I know? Maybe that's normal.
Well, and plus, is she going to going to become a pastry chef? Because most of the time that's separate in French cooking. You have the regular food and then you have the pastries as a whole separate thing. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, maybe she
yeah, who
does do it.
knows?
Has done a lot of pastries in the past. Maybe that's what she was planning to do.
Yeah. Who knows? But she is excited. She might be going to Paris and continuing on in her studies. We didn't see any of Sean in this episode, Mr. French teacher. So I guess he's
No.
gone, done.
I think he's done. I think his purpose was to, revitalize Stephanie and to get her interested in Paris and this cooking school. I don't know that we'll see him again. Maybe we will, but I suspect his story is over.
Yeah. So Sam is busy doing surgeries again. And all of a sudden it seemed like they had like a fairly good dynamic, and all of a sudden it's like Cassie is saying, oh, you're never there for me, and you're a workaholic and all of this stuff, and don't become that person again when you go back to work. And he's like, this is my job, this is what I do. I don't know, like, it's just weird because they don't have any kids at home. Like, what's wrong with, like, I don't know.
Well, I feel like she did say all those things as you just said, but I feel like her real concern is that he's not healed enough to go back to work. So it's not like, don't become this workaholic like you used to be, like, because she kept saying, like, it's your first day back, it's your second day back, like, go slowly into it. But then she did get very upset when he was like, oh, sorry, I can't do the sweetheart sprint. And she was like, you promised me you would. But I mean, as a doctor, there's got to be a million missed dinners and dates and movies because of emergencies. I mean, that's just the nature of the job. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I was like, where did this all come from? And then you have Patience amulet. They talk about that she had the amulet, and that this amulet has some power, particularly with the moon. So we'll see what's going to keep happening. But
yeah, I love the scene. I love the scene where they pulled out, because this is, again, the kind of things that I'm fascinated by. They pulled out the floor plans to Grey House to do that little divining thing to see if the amulet was there in the house.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was far more interested in is I paused it as I was watching it to, like, look at the floor plan of Grey House, because there's always been this debate about how many bedrooms do they have.
Right.
And a few episodes ago, and it was when I was off from the podcast, so I didn't get to talk about it, they mentioned that it was an 11-room house. Now, they certainly must mean 11 bedrooms. They can't mean 11 rooms, because the downstairs rooms would take up more than half of that, and you'd have just a couple of rooms upstairs. But on the floor plan, in the second floor, they showed 6 bedrooms, a master bedroom and 5 guest bedrooms. Now I'm picturing, because we know there's a third floor, because when Abigail was, what was his name? Philip, that guy who she was semi-dating for half a second. He was staying upstairs, and she was like, oh, I'm in the room right above you, meaning there's obviously 3 floors. So if there's another 5 bedrooms on the third floor, that's 11 bedrooms. So that kind of tracks. I'm sure I'm the only one who cares about these things, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because then isn't there also the tunnel? Remember,
right?
That they take the tunnel to the city hall when they, for the Halloween
this Grey House, right? This Grey House is like, it's like a TARDIS. Like, it's bigger on the inside than the outside.
That's right.
It's there's so much going on.
I love though when the words calm and Martha have never been entered in the same sentence. So she's putting on the Sweetheart Sprint, and it's 4 adventurous events. The winner gets a hot air balloon ride for 2. So, do you think that sounds fun? The Sweetheart Sprint?
Oh my God, it sounds like so much fun. That is totally something I would do. I love doing doing like treasure hunts and things like that. I'm down for all of that.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I went to the college that has one of the world's largest trivia contests every year.
Really?
Yeah, and we used to do it every year, and it was a big deal. This was in the age before the internet, though, so it was harder. Like, you had to really know stuff or be able to find stuff. We'd make phone calls to like a zoo in Atlanta to get an answer for something. Nowadays, I imagine you could just do it all on the internet, so it's not as much fun. But games like that, like doing from place to place and finding things and having little tasks to do, I am all for that 100%. I love those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best at them. I did a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire animation game show on or my friend does it on YouTube, and I did pretty good twice, and then one time I got out way early because of a stupid Flintstones question. I don't know about Flintstones. So always be bitter about that. My game show track record was ruined.
Oh, damn you, Fred and Barney.
I know. Yeah. So they start out with they have to put together the clues for a puzzle.
Right.
And I thought it was so funny every time Martha said son of a biscuit.
And then Tom said the same thing. It's like their thing that they do. I found it interesting that like we only saw one, I think, or maybe we saw two of the final quotes, but obviously everybody had their own quote, like a separate quote. They weren't all searching for the same quote. Which I guess makes sense, because otherwise you could cheat and look over and see what the other person has done. But yeah, and these quotes were, I mean, I'm not much of a poet, but it seemed like they were fairly obscure.
Yeah.
To be able to find, it wasn't like, give me liberty or give me death or something like that sort of everyone has heard of. It was much more these rare, poetic quotes from 16th century French poets or something. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I'd heard of any of them. Then we have Dottie and Cassie are working together because they're both work widows, which I've never heard that term.
Oh, work widow? Sure.
Work widow.
Yeah. It was nice that they were together and they got to do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know about that stacking up the cupcakes thing.
The muffins, yeah.
Stacking muffins, up the
muffin. They make a muffin tower. I'm like, that's a lot of muffins.
It also seems like that's a really hard thing to pull off, I would think.
Yeah, because muffins are kind of curved at they're curved at the top, so they're not going to stack well.
Exactly. And I don't know. I don't know. That seems like a tough one.
I feel like they were like, what do we do? Let's go over to craft services.
Well, you know what it is? They had to have one thing for each like location that they already had, right? Like so the first one is at Martha's house, and then at Gray House, and then at
it just felt a little like we're a little light on the budget this week. Let's go over to craft services and get all the muffins.
Yeah. Well, then when they were at Stephanie's and they were doing the cake decorating.
Yeah, cake decorating,
and then the flower thing at Abigail's.
And then Sam interrupts the cake towering and at Gray, because that's a Gray house, and that was a really awkward scene. I thought, like, I don't know, you just don't normally have that kind of conflict, that kind of fighting in a Good Witch.
I agree. It was definitely out of the norm.
Yeah,
I didn't mind it. I only, again, knowing what we know, that there's only 2 more episodes, which we didn't know at the time we were watching the episode, I think, right? Or did we know?
That's right.
I thought, ooh, where could this go? Like, could this be a longer term thing? But with just 2 more episodes, and they're going to wrap it up somehow. They're going to make up and everything will be okay. And I can't imagine them leaving this show with like Cassie and Sam on the outs. I mean, that's just not possible.
I would be very mad if that was the case. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
So then Samantha and George are trying to figure out what's going on with them. She says, "You're a very sweet man," but she's very insecure. And it always feels weird to me when these older couples, I don't know, like have commitment problems, and maybe that's not fair. But
Well-
I just feel like by the time you're Samantha and George's age, you should know what you want.
Well, this is the thing, though. Remember, she did finally, because I questioned last week whether, like, did we know, has she ever been married or what was her situation? And she said she had like an ex-fiance, and she was like, after what happened to him, I don't know. I mean, what happened to him? Did he like just up and leave her?
Yeah.
Did he die? I mean, I don't know that we know the backstory, but obviously she had this fiance. She was ready to make this commitment, and then something happened. And she's a little gun shy of that something similar could happen again, whether it's, somebody dying or leaving her again. So I sort of understand that, but in the end, she made the right call, and it was so cute. I just love those two.
Yeah.
And
so she asked him to go steady, which
Right.
was really cute.
it's so cute because that's like so old fashioned. But I
Yeah.
mean, when they were kids, that's probably what you said.
Mhm.
I do love the fact that you can sort of tell when we get to the end, like everybody's paired up, and so everybody can kind of have their happy ending. George with Samantha, Sam and Cassie are going to make up. Abigail and Donovan will figure out what's going on with them. Stephanie is going to get back with Adam, as much as you don't want him to. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, and then of course, Tom and Martha are there. So it's all going to be these couples who are together, and they're going to solve it. And Joy and Zoe will be together. Everybody's going to be together, which is the way you want it, right? Let's face it. If it's
Yeah.
going to end, you want everybody in a happy place. That's what the
Yeah.
show's about. It's not about
I agree.
realistically somebody's in a miserable place when it ends. That's not what the show is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And do you remember who it was? Was it, I think it was Adam that says, "Why is cake and ice cream not called a la mode, but it is with pie?" I think it was Adam.
I think it was George, wasn't it?
Or was it George? I can remember. I forgot to write it down. But yeah, why is cake and ice cream not called a la mode? If you hang around with me enough, you'll think of these things.
Yeah. It's so cute.
That's so funny. I mean, I think technically if it's in French, it would be a la mode, but why do we use the French in one case and not in the other? I don't know.
Is it because when you have cake and ice cream, like if I say, "Oh, do you want some cake and ice cream?" It's not like ice cream on top of the cake. Usually it's like there's a piece
The
of cake and
side,
then here's some ice
maybe.
cream on the side. Whereas
Yeah.
pie a la mode, the ice cream is
On
right
top.
on top of the pie. So it's not like you're not getting pie and ice cream. You're getting the ice cream as an ingredient in the
Yeah.
pie, and thus it needs a new name for this concoction.
I think
There,
you
see, I
figured it
solved it.
out,
I think I
Randy.
figured it out. They needed to check with me next
Yeah.
time, so I can tell them the real scoop. I don't know. I just made that up off the top of my head, but it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then we also have this conflict between Abigail and Martha, because evidently the city hall is ordering flowers on a weekly basis.
This must be what keeps Abigail in business.
The big part of the budget there is going to fresh flowers.
I mean, Middleton must be flush with some money. They
Yeah,
must have
I
a
think
very,
so.
high tax base because they can afford to get in fresh flowers every week in
Yeah,
City Hall. Enough so that when it doesn't come through, Abigail's like, "Oh, this is going to hurt my business."
yeah.
I do love the whole flower universe subplot. And
Mhm.
again, sadly, because we only have 2 more episodes, it's not really going to go much of anywhere. But I was looking forward to some duking it out between
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who owns Flower
Flower
Universe.
Universe guy. Yeah, and so Martha says, "Well, I'll do half and half. I'll do half Flower Universe and half you." And so Abigail's still upset about that. But then the Flower Universe guy offers her less for a purchase. than
Right.
what he'd offered originally.
I mean,
And
ultimately, that's if we had time, that's where this would go, right? He would just continue to try to like reduce her business by. I mean, if Flower Universe is this big chain, which it seems like it is, they could
Mhm.
like literally be operating at a loss. They could give Flowers practically away, take away all of Abigail's business, and then she would be forced to sell. And like he said, and as he said as he walked out, he goes, "Next time my offer is even 10% lower."
yeah,
So that could be a really interesting
the shark.
plotline moving forward, but I don't think it's we don't have much time for
Yeah.
it to
Well, and it's just the idea of vino and vases, the flower arranging workshop.
right.
Yeah, I think that would be successful. I think.
So the idea, because I thought vino and vases, and then like, oh yeah, it's just a flower arranging workshop. But is the idea like a bunch of people get together and they're drinking wine as they're like learning about how to like arrange flowers? Is that the
I think
idea?
so. I think that's the idea, like those
So
painting classes, that
right.
people do
So really,
with
it's just an
wine.
excuse to day drink, and then you just do flowers as a by the
So
by.
yeah,
That
yeah,
what we're saying? That sounds
I
like it
think
would be very
so.
popular. I think that sounds like that would be very popular.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said about those painting things that people do.
Right.
Wine. So
Right.
yeah, I I don't need the wine part of it, but I'd take a flower decorating class. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Why not? Um, and then we have Adam and Stephanie talking it out, and they almost kiss, and they've sent the cake to France. Hop,
Yeah,
skip, and
I
a
love the
jump.
little graphic where it's like from Middleton to Chicago to like then to Paris, I think, and then some final destination outside of Paris. But
Yeah.
it was like, they were literally tracking it like, oh, it's just arrived in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, I know you're still very anti-Adam, and I completely understand, but if he did feel more charming to me in this episode, and I feel like
Mhm.
he trying to, redeem himself.
Yeah.
But you're right, he needs to say the words, and maybe he will. Maybe that will be the final step where Stephanie forgives him and takes him back, is when he finally just admits, listen, I was a complete idiot, and I'll never let it happen again.
Yeah, that's what I hope. That's the goal. But yeah, they did have the almost kiss, and they let a sound on the computer stop them.
Right, which
Which
was the package arriving, right, in
yeah,
Chicago.
in Chicago, I'm like, that wouldn't stop me. Go for it,
Yeah, it's not like a
girl.
phone call or something where you have to
Yeah,
then pay attention to it. I know.
yeah,
Well, it's in a long line of Hallmark almost kisses,
yes.
as we often do. So,
So then
um,
we have a scene with Joy and Zoe, like we said, of them committing to each other despite their fears, and that was really sweet.
it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a great scene between those two. They feel like the most sort of adult, if that makes sense. Like their relationship feels the most real to me. Like I can see two adults having that conversation, where a lot of times the problems that some of these other couples have, they're a little junior high. They're a little like,
Yeah,
yeah, when you're 13, you worry about these things, but when you're an adult, like this is small fry stuff.
yeah.
Whereas Zoe and Joy feel like they have legitimate issues, but they're solving them in an adult way, and it just feels like the most realistic to me.
Yeah, I agree. And also, yeah, like, and then Martha and Tom, those are like the two most grounded, I think, relationships of the
Yeah,
show.
I mean, what
And
would be great, because they did it with Cassie and Sam way back, and maybe there's no time anymore, but what about a double date, Martha and Tom and Zoe and Joy,
yeah, that
so
would have
that
been
Zoe and
cute.
Joy can see like what that relation. Oh, they
Hmm.
didn't do it with Cassie and Sam. They did it with Brandon and Tara. Remember, they went and
Oh, yeah.
they had a dinner with them, and Tom and Martha were arguing about something, and Brandon was like, "Oh my God, are they going to break up?" And they're like, "No, no, this is how married
Right.
couples are. We have a little spat. It doesn't mean anything." And I think Joey and Zoe, Joy and Zoe could use uh, that
Yeah,
example of how a relationship can be.
I agree. I think that would have been fun. It was so cute though when he says, "I can tell you how much you mean to me in 3 words," and he says, "I love you," and she says, You're my everything. That was so cute.
I know. That was great.
Yeah. And
Those guys,
then he says, with you, everything is possible.
oh,
Melt
they
your
are the
heart.
best. They are the best. They
Yeah.
are the best.
Definitely. And then we find out, like you said, about the Merriwick plant getting destroyed, wilting ever since the moon turned red, and they're all fading in their powers. So that's definitely interesting. And then Sam and George have a little talk, and he says, "Oh, the advice: never go to bed angry." And he says, Is it better to stay up and argue?" And he says, "Better than not talking at all."
Yeah.
I'm not married either. Neither of us are married, correct? But I actually think that never go to bed angry is a terrible idea because sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I have been married. It's absolutely the right thing to do, is never go to bed angry.
Well, here's my thing is that sometimes you need time to cool down. And if you're heated up, you might say something that you regret. That if you just taken some time to calm down and then the next day talk it out, it'll be a lot better than saying something when you're all heated up. So that's why I say I don't think the advice to never go to bed angry is necessarily good advice. But again, I'm not married. What do I know?
I think the caveat to all that is it's not like you have to solve the problem that night, but you just have to talk and agree not to be angry with each other. We're going to solve this problem. We can talk tomorrow, but don't be like still really upset with each other as you go to bed. Because if you walk away, if you're angry, you walk away, you need time to process. You're going to be processing while you're still angry. You need to talk about, like, this problem is not unsolvable. We will solve the problem. You can talk about some things. You're not going to solve it that night, necessarily. But yeah, because as he said, his final advice is the best advice. Talking is better than not talking. Because not talking doesn't get you anywhere. I truly believe that's true.
You think? Yeah, let us know if you're listening. Let us know in the comments what you think, because I just still think sometimes better to let things cool down and not say something that you're going to regret, that you wish you hadn't said in the heat of the passion and the anger. Like, I think there could be an argument made for going to bed angry and letting things cool down. But I see what you're saying as well, that that maybe not necessarily feeling like you have to solve the problem, but at least have that sort of like maybe calming down together is maybe the right way to go. I don't know.
That's sort of what I'm saying, is like you have this conversation, like, you don't even need to address the issue. You just need to, like, reinforce that, we're not angry with each other. We have this problem. This problem can be solved. Maybe not tonight. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let us know what you think. So they end up it leaves with Cassie alone, bed empty, and her looking out at the moon. So yeah, I guess we didn't take the advice.
This moon is definitely right. Well, this moon is interesting.
Yeah.
Am I wrong that way back when, at the beginning of the season, when George first told him about the sand in the bags, that he said that I had to tell you during a blood red moon, or whatever that the red.
Yeah, I think so. Moon. What was the magic? I can't even remember what the magic of the sand was. What was it?
Remember, it was sand from their, like, ancestral home in England.
Oh, okay.
And
forgot.
But I don't know what it did. I've forgotten what it actually did. It didn't. Again, it's one of these things where the writers come up with these ideas, but I don't know that they have a game plan of where to take it. They're like, oh, isn't this interesting that there's these bags of sand? Okay, sure. But, like, no, and you don't have to tell it all to the audience right away, but you should at least know, as you're writing these stories, like, where this is going and what it means. But I don't know.
It's interesting.
There's certainly a possibility that in the next 2 episodes, they sort of wrap all this stuff up from the season. We've seen it before.
Because that's all they got. So we will be back on the 27th to recap the last 2 episodes and the season as a whole. So that should be really fun. Let us know your thoughts about this episode and where you see things going, your thoughts about the canceling of the show. We would love to hear all about it. And Randy, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. And yeah, you can make sure y'all are following us on social media, Hallmark Reviews Pod and Hallmark Reviews Podcast. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And also make sure you check out our merch store where we have tons of goodies inspired merch, including our new Pride Month shirt for Team Zoe. Really cute, designed by Jessica Miller. And I think y'all will really like that one. And also check out our patron group. We're going to have a fun activity this weekend on Saturday. We have writer Rick Garman coming on for our monthly watch along. And we're going to watch It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas. And it's only $2 to join the Patreon. And you get to take part in all these fun activities and things in our patron Facebook group. And so we really appreciate that. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Really appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. And so we'll see you next time for the finale. Bye, everyone.
See you then.